All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is Jade, and I'm here with my boy Nick. You haven't seen him in a while. Say hi, Nick.
I'm not dead. I'm here. Hello.
And for those of you who are not familiar with the Oda Zone, this is the unscripted, just the random talky talk thing I do to like fill space on my channel. So if you like that, you're gonna get more of those because I want to make a lot more and stuff like that. Also, as far as the gate video, I'm still making it. I promise it's coming. Do not fear. It is on the way and it will be a longer video. So look forward to that. So today on the Oda Zone, we will be talking about Fate, the Fate franchise. If you know anything about that, it's a pretty big thing all around. Everything, yeah.
What? I thought it was pretty niche.
Some people think it is, but yeah.
Well, certain parts of it are, but
Yeah.
not the whole thing
Yeah.
in its entirety.
Yeah, like the original visual novel, which apparently a lot of people didn't know was an eroge, apparently.
It's pretty funny, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty funny indeed. So yeah, let's give a rundown of like what Fate is, I guess, in our history with it to start
What
off.
is Fate Stay Night? What does the title even
Classic.
mean? I honestly don't even know. But anyway.
Yeah, you can tell we're just gonna be fucking around this video. But yeah, Fate is this weird thingy mabobber from like 2004. It started as a eroge visual novel, which is a visual novel with sex shit, in case you didn't know. It's basically like this magical death game between like teenagers and shit, and a not so teenage priest guy and teacher person. But yeah, like death game where they summon historical or fictional legendary figures and do battle to the death for the chance at the magical holy grail, which will grant them any wish they want. Yeah, and it's cool. The concept is like fucking amazing, bro, and people love it. So yeah.
This is historical figures battle royale, or for you youngin' kids, it's historical figures Hunger Games. So.
Yeah, basically historical figure Hunger Games. Yeah, so let's go on to our history with the series. Nick, you can go first.
Okay, so my history with it is actually a little bit longer than I would have assumed, like off the top of my head, because technically the first time I ever heard about Fate Stay Night was when I was in high school. And for people that don't know, which I'm assuming most of the people won't really know about my history about getting into anime and visual novels and stuff, but back in high school I really wasn't big into anime or anything like that. The only thing I would watch is like big long shonen shows. So, like I had watched Dragon Ball and some of One Piece when I was in like a senior in high school. But I think I started first hearing about it when I was like a junior or senior in high school because one of my friends was getting into Fate Stay Night, and actually on the background of his phone he had Saber and Shiro on there. And every once in a while he'd talk to me and he'd go on and on about the series, and particularly about how much he hates the Fate ending. And he would talk about like all the other little bits and pieces that happen in the other story routes and stuff. So like I would pay attention to like parts of what was happening, but the other part I'd get lost because I was like, what is this? This sounds so weird and confusing and stuff. And he's talking about like the visual novel, even though he watched the Dean anime, I think.
Classic.
Yeah, which is how most people ended up actually seeing Fate for the first time. Original Fate Stay Night. So that was like my very first exposure to Fate, but it wouldn't be until I started getting into visual novels around 2014, and I saw it was on Vue Novel. big props to you if you remember what that is. Um,
Yeah.
and it was one of the visual novels on there I could download, so I downloaded it. And maybe like a few months after I first started really getting into visual novels, I tried it out. And honestly, I was reading the prologue, got to a certain part in it, and I just stopped. I just like stopped
Yeah.
reading it. I couldn't like at that time. I couldn't actually get used to visual novels that had the I forgot what it's called, but it's the style where the text goes over in front of all the characters. Um, it's like a like more traditional novel layout over all the sprites and everything. It's not to the bottom corner. It's called something, but I don't remember exactly what the name
Hmm.
is. Um, I couldn't get used to that, and I also just thought like the pacing was utterly slow. So
Oh
I just kind of
man,
dropped it and
I have
moved
something to
on,
say
and it
about
wouldn't be
that.
until yeah, and it wouldn't be until I don't know, maybe like a year later or something, I decided to give it another go. What the reason was, I don't really remember. Um, and I was able to get through the prologue, and then I was actually able to get into the novel itself, and um I read Fate Stay Night and Unlimited Blade Works, and I read some of Heaven's Feel, but I couldn't finish it, and it wouldn't be till like many years later where I actually finished Heaven's Feel. Um, and after that, that's how I got into the rest of Fate series. So my
Hmm.
first gateway Fate thing was the actual original visual novel. So
Yeah, that's pretty interesting considering most people never that's not the story for most people.
no,
Most people it's like the anime adaptations or something and they like go in through that. So yeah, that's really fascinating on that front. Now time for my story. It's interesting. My first exposure to Fate was through these manga adaptations. That's right, not the anime adaptation, but like manga adaptation. This was back when the only adaptation was like the Dean one for
yeah.
like Fate Stay Night.
And I remember
And
when you told me about that, I was like, "Wait, there's a manga of it?" I
yeah,
didn't
it's
even
like
know that.
super obscure and it's like an adaptation of like the Fate route. And I read that along with like the Tsukihime like adaptation of like the Arculate route, and that shit was like I was like, wow, this is so weird and interesting. I used to like get up to all kinds of weird shit on like reading these really weird obscure adaptation manga stuff. I used to get up to that like a lot. So that's how I first got exposed to Fate and figured out, oh, that's what this thing is. And then some years later, when I was in high school, there's a little bit of a mishap where um I believe I was asking for a game and an SD card from my parents for Christmas, but they only got me the SD card and I was like, shit, what am I supposed to only do with an SD card? And then I was like, wait a minute, I can pirate shit. And so that's what I did. I went on the internet. That's right. Cops don't come for me. I don't have any of the files anymore. But like as a small child, I was like, yeah. Well, not small child. I was a teenager shit. But yeah, I went out and I was like, yeah, let's pirate shit. So I went out and I was like, you know what? Let's go check around stuff. And I found out about visual novels and I decided, hey, you know what? Let's give this thing. Oh, Fate, I know this. Let me try this out. And that's my first, like, I guess, exposure to the Fate Stay Night visual novel.
The
But I
original source
never,
material.
yeah, the original source material. But the funniest shit ever is I never actually got through it all because the old computer I was using everything on that one fucking like we still have it, but it like kicked the bucket for like a little bit.
Is it the computer you were using before the one you have now?
Not the one I have now. I'm talking like way
Oh,
this
okay.
this is
So
like a
even older.
really this is like a really old desktop, like a fucking dinosaur. I'm talking like it ran Windows XP. Like it was old shit. So I basically like I basically was like reading fucking Fate Stay Night on that for like a little bit, and I had a hard time really getting through it because man, the pacing of like the early parts of Fate Stay Night are so fucking slow. Like, holy,
Hmm.
you can tell this is like, this is like Nasu's like his like first big thing, like his first release kind of thing. Because he wrote other stuff before this, but Fate Stay Night was like one of the first like big release other than like Tsukihime and shit like that.
Yeah, Tsukihime was his foot in the door for visual novels, but Fate Day Night definitely kind of like
That was like
is
his
more
big
popular.
thing,
Yeah.
his big what got his name out there in a sense. And yeah, like it has a lot of stuff that's like if you were to show this to people who are like really good writers who know a lot about writing, they'd probably be like, I don't know about this, man, So like it's a really good thing in terms of like its concept and stuff like that, and I really do enjoy the franchise because again has a really solid premise and everything like that, but there's also like little things about it that are like weird turn off stuff,
Oh yeah, for sure.
novel, and it's been like a weird like back and forth of like starting it up, like once I figure out a way to get it again, starting it up and then being like, oh, the pacing, the pacing, and then I stop, and then it's this never ending cycle, and it's like I'd say for like the original visual novel, that's like the biggest barrier. Like once you get past like the early parts, you can like I'm pretty sure you can probably like zoom and get through like the rest of the novel, but like the early parts can like really like they can really like get you. But
I've talked to a
yeah,
friend about it before, and my personal opinion on the prologue is honestly, I think it's unnecessary. Um,
yeah,
there are
I agree.
certain parts that are interesting about it. The thing about it is, for anybody that knows Fate Stay Night, or like the original Fate stories, but hasn't read the visual novel, the prologue is under the perspective of Rin, and it's her like first few days leading up to the Holy Grail War, and how she summons Archer and like her interaction with the characters and stuff. So some of it's kind of interesting, but honestly, it's just way too slow, and it you don't really feel like you're getting to the point, and you're also not you don't have the right perspective to learn everything about all what's happening with magic and shit, which is where Shiro's a much better perspective in, because he's a noob into magic and
Yeah,
all that.
a
So
window into the
yeah,
world.
he's the actual proper entry window, but not so much
Yeah,
Rin.
yeah, she cute though.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But yeah, let's jump next. What we love about Fate. I guess we just spent like a solid like few minutes being like, man, fucking that fucking Fate Stay Night visual novel and its pacing.
Well,
And now we're
that's the
like,
thing. That's the thing about Fate that honestly, I feel like is pretty apparent with with people that are into the franchise, um, and maybe even what some people see from looking out,
mhm,
like outside in. But it's such an interesting franchise that it has a lot of love and hate stuff related to it. But
yeah, yeah, that's
yeah,
the big
um,
theme
mhm.
of like Fate fans is like the love and hate, like that dichotomy.
It goes in hand. It's not separate.
Yeah.
It's hard to have one without the other. Um,
Exactly.
but yeah, so do you want me to start or you want to go?
Um, mine's I feel like is pretty simple, so maybe I should just go
Yeah, go
first.
ahead.
I guess again, I mentioned this before, but I think conceptually, it's just so fucking brilliant, right? It's the idea of like, oh, you summon this familiar, which is this like badass from history or legends and stuff like that, and you and this badass team up to fuck these other guys over, and then once you get the grail, you can get anything you fucking want. It's this a really, really solid concept that like you can do so much with, and I feel like the fucking franchise has been like riding off of that for so long.
Yeah,
That
I
and
was gonna make a joke that they sadly milked that into the ground, but yes.
yeah, and another thing being the really really solid like character designs and waifus and shit like that. The character designs for this series are always just so on point. It's like really crazy, but like it's just always so on point. It's to the point where they can like reuse character designs and nobody fucking complains. How many different versions of Saber are there in existence right now? Like there's the whole Saber face meme of like characters who are so similar in terms of their archetype, like the blonde sword wielding female cute girl, you know
Mhm.
that whole thing, like a dress armor piece thing. It's so done, but nobody fucking cares because like, oh, you're like, oh, solid character design, oh, cute girl, stuff like that. It
Well, I'd
just
say
does.
even for the guys too, because
Yeah,
there's
the guys
it,
are pretty solid
I've
too.
known plenty of girls who like are head over heels for a lot of the male characters. Um,
Yeah,
so it's not just like guys like the girl characters, but like
yeah.
a lot of girls love the guy characters, and vice versa. Like I've known guys that love the guy characters because they look, studdy as hell. But yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah, there's some pretty solid character designs and shit like that in there. And like when you combine these two together, it's like holy shit. It's just it's just such a springboard for like great for forming great attachments to like
Hmm.
pieces of media and stuff like that, especially for this one. It's just like, oh, there's just so much stuff in here that you're like, oh, I can theorize and concoct all these things. The fan creations that can come from it, like it's just such an exceptional concept.
Hmm.
Right. So even if there's like shit in Fate where just like, I may not like it or whatever, I'm always like, yo, I still enjoy it. Even I still enjoy it when it's at its best and when it's doing stuff great. Um, yeah, that's basically why. It's super simple for me.
Well, one thing I'd also to just jump off your idea of the character designs and designs in general. One thing I think is fantastic is that with the introduction of other franchises and spin-offs and it with Fate Grand Order in particular,
Yeah.
it's not just Takayuchi that's doing the art design who's been on it
Yeah.
since the
I've
original.
noticed that.
Yeah, like they bring in a lot of other artists too to do specific characters and all that, and it all seamlessly works. Like I don't really see a lot of characters in any of them or like, oh man, that's not a Fate character. Even with some of the more outlandish characters, like
Yeah. Fucking
with like Thomas Edison,
Edison.
for
Yeah.
example.
We
Like
both
Mr.
thinking
Lion
same.
Man, like yeah, that's ridiculous, but it somehow works still. Like it somehow still can get blended
Yes,
in.
somehow.
Yeah, even though to me it's like, what kind of sense does this make? Um, it still does to some degree. Like there's enough believability there.
Oh yeah,
Um,
by the way, that's another thing I need to add before sorry, before you get to like your your whole full thing, Nick. One thing I like about Fate is how fucking like ridiculous it can be at times too. Like it can
yeah.
be so like absolutely like hilarious and ridiculous without meaning to be. Like on the note of Fate Grand Order, you have like fucking Odysseus. What they fucking had Odysseus, the Fate version of Odysseus has like a fucking like Trojan horse mech or something. It's like what? What?
Hmm.
Fucking Lion Man, Thomas Edison, weird shit like that. Where it's like, and you're not even getting into the stuff where it's like intentionally made to be like off the wall and weird, like Carnival Phantasm and stuff like that. Like whenever Fate does like wacky and weird, like they always pull it off just so amazingly well. That's one thing I'll definitely say.
Yeah, when it's trying to be intentional anyway, it
Yeah.
definitely can like work
Yeah.
incredibly well.
So yeah, no more cutting off, Nick Kun. Your turn.
Now you're good, because honestly, I think a lot of what you've said kind of carries over to my opinions too. Um, I don't know, like there's something I've always tried to think about it ever since I got into the franchise, and I continue to stick with the franchise, but despite my like down moments and stuff.
Yeah.
There's so many ups that happen still that it's one of those franchises where no matter what happens, you just still can't help yourself with wanting to keep going back into and
Yeah.
like looking for what else, because there's so much stuff out there, which we'll definitely get into, like talking about how you even approach the franchise to begin with. But
Yeah.
there's just so much stuff out there that I feel like there's something for everybody within the franchise now. Um, so there's some avenue of Fate that you could actually watch, read, play, etc., and just enjoy it and kind of stick within that universe or spread out and see how each entity builds on itself. It really is like a massive um, multimedia franchise that has
Definitely.
just so much going for it. And even though, like, one of the arguments I would have is that it can definitely be very confusing and not hand holding at all, um, when you start to get it, you can really get it. And
Mm.
to me, the thing that I love the most, honestly, is the characters and a lot of the more humorous, slowed down elements too, which you'll definitely be able to tell when I tell you what my favorite, like, like my favorite entries in the franchises are. Um, like they speak more to what I love the most about the franchise, and to me,
Gotcha.
that usually revolves around the characters and the fun banter, and when like there's actually like a serious story, but it's written to be really engaging as opposed to just kind of like full on dark or a little bit inconsistent or maybe a little too I don't know, traditional, I guess, because
Mm.
that's the kind of thing that's interesting about the original Fate Stay Night story and some of the other entries is that like it's like a dark fantasy shonen. Because like it's not like light in the like in the concept of like the series does not shy away from dark concepts.
Oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
with like exploring certain avenues that are pretty uncomfortable. But it's also very shonen like shonen-y. That's where you got male main character and they kind of get thrown into this world and they have to figure it out and he becomes stronger through the
Yeah,
course
become
of
a
the
hero
show and all
man.
that. Um, or visual novel, whatever it is.
Hero man guy.
Yeah, and a lot of them kind of follow a similar kind of concept to that or change it up in a slightly different way. So I don't know. It's just so vast and varied that there's a lot of things people can pick out. And I think one of the best things about Fate is that if you love it, you just can you can keep exploring to the ends of the earth. There's so much shit. Um, and I don't know. It's got something for everybody. So it's just really great in that way. I'm gonna keep repeating myself if I keep talking. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's essentially what it is for me.
Yeah. Solid, solid. We did, it's happy times, happy times. That's like the way, man. Fade so fun.
Positivity? Nah, nah, nah.
Yeah.
That's not the first thing you think of when you hear Fate.
Now, it's time to talk about everything we fucking hate about Fate. Fucking serious.
Yeah, you remember everything I just said? Throw that out the window because this series is actually horrible.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Garbage.
Nobody
Yeah.
should get into it.
Oh man. But yeah, who wants to go first?
Who wants to light the keg first?
Uh
Man. Okay, I guess I can go then. So, with all that being said, as I was saying earlier, one of the things that I do think is a massive detriment to the franchise is that it doesn't hold your hand with concepts, and honestly, it kind of goes way too up its ass about certain concepts too.
oh yeah.
Um, for example, when it goes into explaining the magic system and how certain elements work, how bonding with certain servants work, the different organizations, the history, what different levels of magistry there are. Like if you're a sorcerer, if you're a wizard, blah blah blah. If even a wizard's a concept, I don't actually remember if it is. It might be. I could be bluffing on that, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it was. Like there's so much shit, and it's very specific, and it sometimes dives way too deep into these things. To
Way
kind of
more
the
than it
detriment of
needs.
the story, honestly.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
there's a
Um,
lot of moments that happen, like sadly, in the original Fate Stay novel, which kind of slows the pacing down. But
absolutely.
it also happens in other franchises, like, or not franchises, but other like entities within the franchise itself.
Yeah.
Um,
Looking at you,
so
Apocrypha.
Apocrypha was just a gigantic, confusing mess. Um, that doesn't know what it wants to
Yeah.
do. But that's the other thing too, is like, as much as there's like a lot of series that I love in Fate, but there's also a couple series that I just don't like at all.
Mm,
Some that are definitely more accepted than others, but then there's others that like I know a lot of people like, but I'm not the biggest fan of, which is in the case of Fate Zero. Like I know a lot of people
yeah.
love it, including you. Um,
Yeah, I enjoy Fate Zero,
yeah,
but I
but I am
understand
not.
why
I am
people wouldn't
not a
like it.
fan of it. So
Yeah.
it's kind of hard in that regard. And as we said, Fate Apocrypha is the other one that's just like, get that away from me.
Yeah, that one was just ugh.
So just as like there's some series that will like really click with you, there's others that are just like
Yeah,
they won't. Um,
absolutely.
which is kind of like the ups and downs of like something that's as diverse as what Fate does with its different entries. And
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of it revolves around that, just kind of like up its ass ante of its lore. And sadly, when you get into the franchise and you kind of like meet the wrong people, if you say things incorrectly,
Oh,
you
yeah,
get
Fate.
told very hard, and it can be very off-putting for somebody who's like new to
Yeah, the
something.
lich mob, if you
Yeah.
will.
So that's why, I don't like to get into the specifics of Fate as much as like anybody else, because to me, I'm gonna get stuff wrong regardless, because I can't retain all the memory of like what each little thing means in and like
Yeah,
a
it's
certain
so
story.
detailed,
Oh yeah, more than it needs to be sometimes.
Yeah, like you told me about the fucking like sword thing in the original
Oh
visual
yeah.
novel.
This is something I've told like everybody now at this point, but it's just something that's like, it's the quintessential example of what I'm talking about, because in Heaven's Feel, this isn't a spoiler, but in Heaven's Feel, there's this sword that gets used towards the end of it, and the way Nasu, the writer, describes the sword is that it's not just like a sword that like pulls in infinite amounts of magic or energy or whatever. Like you could have just left it as that and be done with it. And then if you want to go into supreme detail, leave it in the weapons bio, because that's already in the fucking visual novel. Um, but instead, he had to describe how it didn't just take magic infinitely. Instead, it would go to many different worlds or dimensions or whatever he says, and it would take an energy from the room in that other dimension, and it would keep taking from other dimensions to take in the energy and flow into the sword, which to me just translates to, oh, so it takes infinite amount of magic. Okay.
Yeah.
You could have just said it like that. Why'd you have to like take 20 different like separate lines of dialogue to say that? Like I don't care. It's a
Yeah.
fucking
If
sword. It's a cool
yeah,
sword. Leave it at that.
Fate is not exactly great when it comes to conciseness.
No, it's not.
Oh man.
I mean, if you'd love to know everything about what you're reading, have at it. There's a lot of lore to dive into, but if you're somebody who doesn't want to dedicate their time to just one franchise, then get ready to have to kind of like learn things as you go. I'm still confused about stuff like fucking like reality marbles and shit. I'm still confused about that to this day. I'm thinking I get it more these days, but like I'm still like, is that really what a reality marble does? I don't know. So
Oh man. Yeah, I guess it's my turn now, huh? So this fucking series, bro. This fucking series. I really enjoy a lot of stuff about it and whatever. But it's just but the things I enjoy the most about it is when it or the time I enjoy man, fuck. The way I enjoy Fate most of the time is just like when it's more down to earth. I really, really fucking hate it when like Fate or any Type Moon stuff starts getting so fucking pretentious. Like as Nick, referred to as getting up its own ass. Like that is such a fucking common thing with like Fate. And it's like I feel like the writers need to just cool down and realize, hey, you're writing a story about like anime girls with big boobies, helping like do magic or fighting magic and shit like that, whatever.
Or historically figures
Yeah.
hijacking planes and using them to fight, the god,
Yeah, and
the
shit
the,
like
the
that,
first
right?
heroic spirit ever. you know,
Yeah, like heroic spirits doing all kinds of crazy shit and fighting and getting up
fighting
to
on
wacky
planes.
antics. Yeah, fighting on fucking planes like Apocrypha. Like it's like, hey, hey, come on, calm down, guys. No need to like fucking get all pretentious and esoteric. It's so esoteric too. Like you mentioned, like that was a big thing I noticed with like the visual novel is instead of just like keeping things short and sweet and trying to make things as communicatable as possible to the audience so they actually know what the fuck you're talking about. um there's so many moments where there'll be lines where um instead of just going, oh, it's magic or something, Rin will go off into this like fucking 3 paragraph long explanation on how blah 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 thing works and whatever. And it's like, as you mentioned before, like it's way better for the audience if it's like, oh, it's Shiro, you're playing as Shiro and you get like a basic explanation. You don't need to know every single thing, and it slows everything down, as you mentioned.
And that ends
And
up being Rin's job anyway. All right, Shiro, here's the
yeah,
deal. This is how this works.
yeah, it's like we really don't need all this fucking bullshit. And it can get kind of like irritating because you're like,
Mhm.
man, this fucking series, it thinks it's so fucking smart, so clever. This is such the problem with like Apocrypha. Like, holy shit. Like it gets to a point sometimes where characters stop speaking like human beings and start talking in like fucking riddles and shit. And you're like,
yeah.
it's like, please just talk like people. Come
I've
on.
lived my whole life just to do an exposition at this moment right now.
Yeah, like fucking exposition, character wails off some like exposition with a bunch of like jargon and bullshit, and then afterwards he just like looks at the cameras like, yeah, I'm fucking cool. I'm
I
badass.
know my shit.
Yeah. That's like
Here,
so
taste a reality marble, motherfucker.
there's so many moments like that in Fate. Like, holy shit. And yeah, I don't like it. I
Well,
feel like that's one of the reasons why I enjoy stuff like Prisma Ilia, because it's basically just a magical girl story but in Fate.
mhm.
Yeah, so it's like it's not trying to be like overly like complex or weird and shit like that. It's just, oh, you like Ilia? You like seeing cute girls? Oh, well, watch this cute magical girl Ilia show, huh?
Well, at least in the beginning, from what I can tell, it looks like the later parts of the series actually do kind of get deeper into lore. But
Yeah, they get deeper into
yeah,
lore, but it's not
at
like,
least it's a build up,
yeah,
as
it's
opposed to
not
just
like,
kind of
yeah,
throwing you right there.
yeah, it's not like all at once. It's like
Mhm.
it's built up to, and it's not like completely unfollowable.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to add real quick is that it's funny though because we're talking about how the lore and certain aspects of how they kind of go into exposition in terms of certain groups or how things work and stuff. But you look at Tsukihime, which is the company Type Moon's like one of their first visual novels, and because I read this recently, there's exposition scenes in that one too, but they're never as lengthy as they are in Fate Stay Night, which is just
Yeah.
surprising to me because like it still gets the message off perfectly fine. Like you can debate how good it is in Tsugihime. I don't think it's ever bad. I think like it's fine, like perfectly serviceable as it should be if it's ever used in a sort of manner as it is. So to see it in Fate Stay Night, like the sequel game, is just kind of weirder. And I think the reason
Yeah.
being is that that game is like they had more time to work on it, so they could like spend like as much as they wanted. And you know, Tsukihime did well enough, so they're like, okay, we can like just go all out with this next visual novel. And to a certain point where they went too far, and
Yeah. Limitations. You
I
need to
think they've
limit
learned their
Nasu's
lesson.
power.
Yeah, and I think for the most part they learned now, especially with Nasu and his writing, which is what I've seen in Fate Go, which has more examples of his newer style of writing. He's definitely worked on that better, but yeah, it's kind of sad that like that kind of plagues the original game a bunch
Yeah.
and other stories. It's not just the original game, but there's
Yeah.
other examples as like Apocrypha as we were talking about.
Yeah. And we haven't seen like the sequel to I haven't like well not seen but read. I haven't read the sequel to Fate Stay Night at all.
Oh,
Just like
Hollow
how
Atraxia? Yeah.
no
I
yeah.
still need to read it. I have not read it yet.
Yeah, so I can't say anything about that.
Same.
Yeah, so that one could be a little bit better. Who knows?
From what I've heard, a lot of people like really like it, so that's why I'm looking forward to when I can finally read it. When I
Yeah,
finally get around to it.
I like white hair waifu girl. She cute.
Yeah. I don't remember her name
Mm,
off the top of my head, but yes, I know who you're talking
yeah.
about.
Yep.
Were there
Whatever.
other stuff too that you like that I
Uh,
haven't touched upon anyway?
I feel like that's basically like the core of like what I fucking hate about
Mm-hmm.
Fate. Really, realistically, I feel like every series where it's just not that is just like a million times like it's just like it's just immediately better, immediately, like without even like no period, no cap, bro. Like and stuff that's like the exact opposite where it's just trying to be silly, it's just so fucking like it's just so it feels so much better. It's like a breath of fresh air, right? You're in the stuffy fucking dusty ass closet with pretentious bullshit, and then you get like the cool fresh AC air, the good ozone layer from something like a Mia cooking show or like fucking
Crisp.
from or something like Carnival Phantasm. It's like I can breathe. yeah, it's just like it's so astounding. Like, and I think they're sort of figuring this out because like, you see a lot more like storylines in Fate Go, that are a lot that do a lot more comedic stuff. So I think they're sort of like learning, hey, we're actually kind of good at this.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this is basically the Fate Hate-a-thon, if you will. So from here we can go into the waifus. Waifus. Yeah. All right.
Woofies.
Now I guess I'll go first since I made you go first last time then.
Okay.
um So as far as like waifus are concerned, I pretty much like every saber face. I mentioned how they be cloning their characters, right? In Fate. How they're like constantly reusing character designs and stuff. Where there's an archetype just called saber face, where you have the original like saber character, which is like supposed to be gender swapped King Arthur Artoria.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they made like a bunch of different versions of her and like other characters that look very similar. And that basically just spawned the whole thing, like a meme, the saber face.
Mm-hmm.
So
Some
yeah,
of them act kind of similar, but a lot of them, surprisingly, are actually very different in their personality, which is
yeah,
kind of the interesting thing. You know, you look at them, you're like, "Oh, that's just Japanese saber," but you're like, "Oh no, Shoji's actually a lot different than that." Okay. Oh, look
Yeah.
at that Nero. Like, oh, she's
Umu.
just Red Saber. Wait, what? She's like super energetic all the time. Oh, okay.
Yeah, the Genki saber. Oh yeah, and that's also a big thing. There's a lot of like gender swap characters
Oh, yeah.
in case you didn't know that about Fate.
Yeah, that's one thing that like that original friend I was talking about who told me about Fate for the first time. That's a running gag. Is like he's always like shaking his head and going like doing heavy sighs about all the gender swaps, and I'm just like, yo, don't you love that Francis Drake has big tits now? Like, isn't that amazing?
Yeah. There's a lot of situations like, oh, look at this character. Who? Oh
The
shit.
history books were horribly wrong, apparently.
Yes, very wrong. Lots of femi fatal characters here.
Nero is not a terrible ruler of Rome. Like Nero
Yeah,
was great.
yeah.
Why did
Nero was one
he
fantastic.
Nero
You know.
couldn't possibly have burned down Rome. Like, what are you talking about? Like, no.
Yeah, she was amazing. You know, you. Oh man, but yeah, like saber faces, adorable, great. Then there's also everybody knows about like Rin, Sakura, and Ilya, and all the various like versions of them and shit like that. They're also fantastic, and everybody has like there's like a bunch of versions of them too and shit.
Hmm.
And yeah, they're great and stuff and wonderful and pretty and cute and everything and they basically carry fate on their tits, right? That's something you need to understand about Fate right now. Like one of the things that like makes Fate as successful as it is like it's amazing fucking like character design and it's amazing waifus and stuff. You
Yeah,
know,
and the characters themselves. Like, it's not just their designs that are great, and
yeah.
which are great, but like their characters and
Yeah, their
personalities themselves are
personalities are
really
very iconic.
enjoyable. Yeah.
Yeah. Like everybody knows like Rin is kind of like almost like an iconic tsundere at this point,
Hmm.
you know.
She's a tsundere that's better than most tsunderes out there because she has the best balance of it, in which she is very like bitchy and snappy and stuff, but like she's also very sweet and very likable and very helpful. Like you might think, oh, she's like gonna be this prissy girl who knows her shit and like will never help Shiro and just be like condescending all the time. But no, she actively helps him all the time, and you can tell she's a good person at heart. And it's that she
Yeah.
doesn't have like this like, oh, I'm better than you personality towards everybody, you know. So
Yeah.
it kind of has like it's an interesting case in which like you look back at a classic example of this archetype and you actually I feel like most people like at least most writers could learn a thing or two of how to actually write a tsundere well.
Yeah, definitely, man. And any words, Nick, on the waifu? I know you got
Well,
something to
I
say.
mean, well, you didn't even say who your favorite is. Like I
Oh
I,
yeah,
I know who your favorite
I
is.
didn't. I know I didn't say who my favorite was, right? Fuck. I like so many of them. It's so hard to fucking pick. It's so
No, I thought
hard.
OG Artorio was your favorite.
Yeah, I really freaking loved her, bro. And I still do. But it's also like it's like over time you're like, oh man, you're like exposed to all these other girls. It's like, oh,
Mm.
should I remain faithful to my lady
Or must
or
I cheat? I'm a bastard.
yeah, it's just like that confliction. Like shit. That confliction. I mm, yeah, you know what? I'll go and say like Artoria, just because like it's like if we're talking about like just her, we're talking about her plus the various versions of her, like on top of
Because there's
that,
a
you're like,
bunch, yeah.
yeah, you're just like, yeah. I think like the classic OG plus the various versions, and also like having to do with her personality. Like usually she's like, just stoic knight lady girl, but she also has like a really cute side too.
Hmm.
It's very, very, very classic and everything. So I'll go with her because like yeah, it's like the classic, and I will say that like that's kind of like the first love in Fate.
Yeah.
The first love. Honorable mentions to I guess every other Fate girl.
Literally everybody else. I love you.
Yeah, I love them all. They're
Thank you
nice.
all. I love you.
Yeah, I was trying to get away with having to say who my favorite.
I don't want to have to make a choice. God dang it. I mean, it's hard, so it's
Yeah,
it's it's fair. Um, well, anybody that knows me already knows who my favorite is. It's not a hard
yeah,
choice at all.
yeah. Of course,
But for anybody that doesn't know me, Mash Light from Fate Grand Order is my favorite. And
Masu.
like originally when I played, because I started playing Fate Grand Order, oh god, a couple years ago now. When I first played it, I liked her, but it wasn't anything huge. But it was maybe like again a year ago or something had passed, and then I don't know what it was about it. Like I just kept seeing fan art of her. I kept seeing other like entities and versions of her, and I kept looking at her in the game and seeing how her character progressed as the game went on, and it just clicked. It's one of those things where like you click with a character, you click with how their design is, with how their personality is, how they're like written and they develop and everything, and you're just like, I adore this character. Like this is the best. Um,
Hmm.
and that's just kind of how it is. Like, and I'm not even just talking about like Fate, but like Mash has become an absolute obsession of mine. It's crazy because there's so much like paraphernalia and like figures and posters that I have of her now. It's nuts.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. That's the real waifu right there.
yeah, you have the real one when like you just dedicate that much of your like time and energy towards, and you're just like, that's the best. She's the best character, yo. Like, come on. Um, so yeah, I absolutely adore Mash, and my second favorite actually these days is Jonah Arc, who which is funny because I hate Fate Apocrypha,
Yeah, like that's the thing she shows up in, but
which she
like,
was first introduced in that when it comes to Fate. But she's still like one of the best parts of Fate Apocrypha in my opinion.
yeah, she's really solid.
I still think like Alstavo is one of the better characters. Like, well, that's the thing about Fate Apocrypha is there's actually a bunch of really good characters, but
Yeah, that's
it's
right. Like it's like there's so many like
because you're like, oh man,
interesting
I like
servants.
Mordred. I like Mordred's master, the necromancing guy.
Yeah,
Um, I like Frankenstein, and I like her master. It's like, oh, there's all these characters that are
yeah.
great.
It's too
But
bad they had to be in this show of all
this
shows.
clusterfuck of a show.
Yeah, it's so
Um,
sad. You're like, man, I wish they were in a better show.
yeah, but I like John a lot just because like I'm also like very fascinated by her original historical figure. So the fact that like they put her into Fate makes absolute sense to me because I'm like, oh, this is an actual historical woman fighter or woman warrior that's known, and like it makes sense that she would be in here and have a representation. And outside of the more crappy parts of Fate Apocrypha, I think she's handled really well. I really like her story in Fate Grand Order, even if I think that chapter could have used a little bit more. And but every time she's also used in kind of a joking manner with her alter version, which I love too, the concept of like
Yeah,
her having
Jalter.
this back and forth between oh, like I'm this saint, I'm like a good person, I'm fighting for God and for France, but also she was burned at the stake in a horrible manner, and now she wants vengeance, which is her altered version. So it's kind of like this cool back and forth, and they always go at that too. At least in Fate Grand Order, that's always a reoccurring concept. But from there, like again, so many great characters that it's hard to pick. I was a big Reed fan from day one. I
Yeah,
really like
definitely.
Sakura from original Fate too.
Yeah, she's solid.
Yeah, and even though like Saber or Artoria is not up there as one of my favorites, I still really like her. She's still like one of my favorite characters in the original Fate, so it's like it's hard to say that. So yeah, honestly, they're all great. And that can go for like a lot of the characters, not just the girls, but the guys too. So, but we're only talking about the
Yeah.
girls right now because we like girls. So
Yeah, the waifus. The waifu is the waifus of our bloodstreams, I guess.
unless you want to talk about Husbandos.
Husbandos, Well, I mean, we could totally do that if you want.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, because after this, I got like, Jade pulls up list of like things to talk about. Oh, I'm out of options. Waifus, that's
Oops.
right. Oops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just do it. Let's just do it right
Yeah.
now, real quick. We don't have to go that long. For me, my favorite male character in Fate is Cuckoo Cullen, the original Lancer. I love
Yeah.
that man.
Ku. Yeah, I also like Ku. Ku's
He's so
great.
great. Even though he's like technically a villain character in Fate, he is a morally, by his master,
Yeah,
good at
it's
heart kind of like villain character.
yeah,
He's
it's
not
like he's
really a
just
bad
following
guy.
orders kind of guy,
Yeah. Even if he will kill like random bystanders because he has to. He
It's
had
part of the
to,
rules, right?
Yeah. So yeah, he's
Yeah.
definitely one of my favorites. I actually am a pretty big fan of Shiro, the main character from Fate. Even if he's a bit sexist, you can
Yes.
give him a little pass because it's the times. I guess we're better now. And honestly, like outside of the original visual novel, he's a hell of a lot better. So,
Yeah.
in terms of not
People
being
die
like
when
that
they are
anymore,
killed.
yeah.
Just because you're right doesn't mean you're right. Just because you're correct doesn't mean you're right. That
Yeah.
whole.
And of course, I mentioned him earlier, but I also like Ostafo a lot too. One of the
Yeah,
best elements of
Stalfo
Fate
is
Apocrypha.
great.
So good.
Yeah, Stalfo's great. Always charming. Such a
And
charming
even
young
though
man.
I wasn't a big fan of Fate Zero, I was a big fan of Iskander and what's the master's name?
Waver.
Waver.
Yeah.
I liked their relationship a lot too.
Yeah, they really like in a lot of ways. There are lots of moments where they really stole the show in like Fate Zero.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's such a great Iskandar is such like a great yo, this guy's awesome kind of character,
Yeah. Also, you
Yeah.
can't not talk about male characters and not bring up characters like Kide and Gilgamesh.
Oh
It's just
yeah.
impossible not to
Yeah,
talk about.
exactly. Right. Gilgamesh is like pretty legendary as like a villain character. He's like, and Kirei as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're basically like you could think of them as like the OG Fate villains in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
ways.
And at least in Gilgamesh's case, he prevails to the current stuff. He will never die. He will be in everything. I
Yeah,
swear.
basically.
Just as how there's so many sabers, we keep getting more versions of Gilgamesh. So
Yeah, we got like a caster Gil now. We also have like a kid Gil, like
mm-hmm.
his like young version before he started to act like an asshole.
Before he became chaotic good, which is
Chaotic
utter
good.
horseshit.
These fucking the alignments for these characters mean nothing. They really don't. Like when you see it listed, like you have like characters like Tamamo, like chaotic evil, and I'm like,
Well, I mean,
no,
I
you
can
don't.
see it more of that case for her because she is very selfish
Yeah,
and she's like willing to kill people pretty easily. But she's not entirely evil,
Yeah,
but
it's
she's
not
definitely
like
chaotic.
malicious. I can
Yeah.
see chaos. For Gil, it feels kind of like contradictory at times because
Yeah.
he'll like he feels more chaotic evil or chaotic neutral than anything else sometimes just because of how
100%.
devious he can be, and at times of how he'll just be like, all right, I'm just gonna fucking like murder everybody so I can get what I want, kind of thing. You know that.
We can't forget that he wanted to hard R Saber.
Oh yeah.
So that's kind of a big no-no.
Yeah,
It's kind of a big no-no.
he's just like, I want to make her mine. You know, literal trophy wife life.
Really. I want you to be my human-sized figurine.
Oh
Oh
man.
man. But yeah, were there someone in particular you wanted to bring up that I haven't brought up?
As far as like guys go, let me think. How about Sig? I'm joking. I was gonna say Sig. Nah, fuck that.
Oh god.
uh,
Well, Siegfried I like. Sig,
Sig.
no. No.
Bleh. Throws out, almost throws out.
And don't even get me started with Archer. Don't even get me
Uh,
started.
let me think because you said a lot of guys. And I'm like, yeah, those guys are awesome.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
great. But there's actually quite a bit of male characters
yeah. There's a
in the
lot
series.
to like think of, and like not even thinking about the guys who appear in like Fate Go. You know, we have to think about like, oh, if we're
Oh,
talking about,
Karna. I like Karna a lot too.
oh yeah,
Also in Fate
Karna's pretty cool.
Apocrypha.
Yeah.
Doesn't deserve it.
Yeah, Karna is like he's just like a chill guy
Yeah.
who's just kind of like in the war, and he's just surrounded by fucking assholes and idiots.
Hmm.
I mean, he's like on the villain team, but like he's like one of the more reasonable people there, you
Yeah.
know.
Also, my appreciation for him went up after for one of my college classes I read the bits and pieces of the Mahabharata, which is the story he comes from.
Ah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and he's like Karna is one of my favorite characters from the original story. So, like my appreciation just went way up after I read that, and I got to see him again in like Fate stuff, and I was just like, man, this guy's great. He's just such a like complex character, and you can kind of get pieces and pieces of that when I look back at Fate Apocrypha. So, and
Yeah, yeah.
like the other entities I've seen, because he's always like on the one of the worst bad sides, but he's not a bad guy, just like how
Yeah.
Cullen was in
Yeah, just
Fate.
like Ku, right? I
Hmm.
think they're both Lancers too, which is
They are.
interesting.
That's why. Can you tell I'm a big Lancer fan?
Yeah, man. That Lancer bro life, straight up.
I'm not
Mm.
trying to be bad. I'm just too good at it, man.
Just damn straight. Uh, I'll get a bro. Like I feel like you said like most of whoever I would have said in
Hmm.
most cases. Like there are characters who there are I'll throw in some like I guess honorable mentions though some people might hate them. Like you're talking about characters who are just like either we're talking about characters who are just like really complex or just such pieces of shit that you're like, yeah, I feel like for being an antagonist that people want to hate, I think he's like up there. You're probably wondering who I'm gonna mention. You're probably wondering who's Jade gonna mention.
Cool.
Uh um fucking man, why am I blanking on his name? This is probably gonna be the one gap of the freaking video where it's just like, oh, wait for Jay to like actually say, what he like means,
What's he from?
remember.
You know what
Mm,
he's originally from?
mm, You know what? I'll just lump them all together. Fucking all of the Matos. Yeah, now I just remembered. I'm like, yeah, all of the Matos.
Oh,
Goken and
yeah,
Shinji. Those
yeah.
fucking assholes.
Oh, yeah.
Because like not for being like best boy types, but just for being like pieces of shit. Where you're just like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
these guys are just
Fuck
like
that family.
the scum of the earth. They're like different from like Gilgamesh, where our Kirei, where it's like, where Gilgamesh and Kirei are just like, yeah, they do a bunch of like bastardly stuff,
Yeah.
but they're like fun to watch. You know what I'm saying?
Gilgamesh does it for his amusement, and Kide is like, he's just a strange man.
Yeah,
He's
he's
a
just kind of
strange
fucked up.
ass man.
He's
He's
just
just like morally fucked in his head, and he just wants to do bad shit. Because it's like the only way he can get fucking emotion and shit. But like the Mato family, like, you want to see the dark stuff about Fate? Go to the Mato family. That's where you get to see the really fucking
That's where
horrible
you get
shit.
to see the really fucked up shit. Also, like, yeah, we already mentioned them, but like, I do want to like put a little emphasis on some of the other characters we like brought up, like Waver. I think Waver is like a really cool character just because you get to see him kind of grow up
Yeah.
in the series. Like, there's a new anime where it's just like adult Waver being like a magic detective guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a thing out there, and you get to see that like bridge or connection to like the various stuff. Like, I believe towards the end of the Unlimited Blade Works anime, right? There's like a whole there's literally like a scene where Waver and Shiro run into each other in like the clock tower and everything. And have
Mm-hmm.
like a little conversation. You get to see like, oh, it's adult Waver and shit, and he's like grown up and become all mature and stuff. And
That's
like
interesting. I didn't actually know about that because I haven't seen the Unlimited Blade Works anime yet.
yeah, it's like an interesting, like, nice touch because I don't believe that was in the original visual novel.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, it's like a nice little thing they threw in the original content. I love original content.
I don't even know if Waver existed at that point. I don't think he did.
Yeah, I don't think he did because
No.
Fate Zero came after like Fate Stay
Yeah,
Night.
it was a bunch of light novels after Fate Stay Night.
Yeah.
By good old Gen.
Butch Gen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, we can move on then since I feel like we've talked about the guys a good amount now.
Yeah. So is there, because again, I'm basically like, we've basically covered everything.
Well, here we can talk about like, because I haven't brought up my favorite entries into the franchise yet, so we can just kind of say that now that we've kind of got past that negative stuff and go back to again more positives.
Yeah.
So yeah, like perfect example of, because I was saying like, oh, it has every pieces for everybody that they like. In my case, as I said, I like the characters and the slower stuff and little heart-to-heart moments and kind of like more fun bits. And to me, my favorite Fate thing I've ever gone into is the Emiya cooking show, which is a spin-off on its own. It had a manga, which I still need to read, but I watched the anime of it, and it is wonderful. Not only do they give you nice little like fucking recipes every episode of something you can cook. Not only that, but also you get to see each of the characters like after the Holy Grail War, geez, and none of them are dead. They're all alive and they're all just chilling.
Yeah, the happy.
And they all just like hang out, they talk, they get into little funny banterns. Like maybe one episode they'll go swimming and then have a meal afterwards, or maybe they'll go to to Rin's house and like chill there and have a meal there, or talk with Ilya and stuff. And there's always different little meals and there's always little different moments, and no matter what characters are in the original visual novel, they usually interact with them somehow. Unless they're like the big villains, they kind of ignore those characters, but
yeah,
I feel like that makes sense.
except for like Shinji, I guess there's like a little moment.
Yeah, Shinji has one little moment, but he doesn't speak. He's just kind of there. And it's like, funny, honestly. It's wholesome, but it's also like, man, I still fucking hate that guy. So yeah, that's easily my favorite, and also it was by UFO Table, who's done like all of the Fate animes, most of them anyway, not all of them, and they do an amazing job at kind of replicating the manga work. But when it comes to the serious Fate stuff, I am still generally a fan of the original Fate Stay Night novel. It's not perfect by any means, but I do like most of it.
Mm,
And I think it's still worth it if you're interested. But just be ready that there's bits and pieces that are definitely a little on the slower part of it, and parts that are dated and whatnot. Um, but I'm
yeah.
also a big fan of Fate Grand Order, even though I know it's a kind of, that's a little bit controversial in terms of how some people really love it and how some people utterly hate it. It's got its
Yeah,
gotcha
like
systems and all
like
that.
Fate Go is kind of like it sort of gets the blame for like, oh, this is why we can't get more like
Yeah,
fucking regular Fate content,
it is. But at the same time, there is a reason for why it works and why it's so popular. Like, if it didn't work, it wouldn't still be here, If
Yeah.
it was all it was like a money grab, just like you pay money and you get bullshit and you just get terrible stories, then nobody would be sticking around with it. But there is an actual good story that's happening there, and I know some people are a little bit mixed on certain elements of the Grand Order first, like original story, but I think it overall is good, and definitely the later chapters are great. Like I like to me, definitely the two standouts, which are the more popular ones for good reasons, are the Camelot one and the Babylonia. And Babylonia was my favorite one, so
Mm,
it works. And all of the other little events that happen kind of fill in that like desire for the more comical Fate storylines, because that's what they do. Like they usually take a little plot and they'll be like, how can we make this ridiculous? Like we'll have this Halloween event be Elizabeth Bathory trying to once again like be great idol even though she's terrible. But then we'll have like a pyramid crash into the town, and now it's Cleopatra. But then the next year we'll have the pyramid crash, but then like a castle on top of it crash, and now like we have Osaka Behime and her goonies like trying to take over the town and shit. Like, let's just make it more ridiculous. And we'll also have giant kaiju robots, because why not?
yeah, Mecha Eri-chan.
Yeah. Um, and the summer events are always great too.
Yeah.
So for me, like those are what I kind of like the most in the series, and I think they just do it really well. Um, and that's why I usually talk about them the most. But
Yep.
I do like still exploring, because I did like the Ilya show, and I want to see more about the original story, like the original Fate visual novels anime adaptations, because they probably will fix a lot of the issues I had.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, those are just like some of mine.
Okay. Now that Nick has said his piece, it is time for me to like get in there and go but yeah, for me, I guess I really like, I think I already mentioned it, I really like Prismalia anime.
Hmm.
I never got to finish the original visual novel, though I do want to one day, maybe someday in the future.
Hmm.
uh I like Fate Zero, but I feel like it's definitely one of those things where it's like I can only watch, I've only watched it once for like good reason, just because it's like it's I'd say it's probably one of the darkest Fate stories out
Yeah, it
there,
is
and it's so
for
like
sure.
unbelievably like at the end you're just like, man, I'm so fucking depressed. Like it's so yeah, like man, that was so sad. um so like you watch it and then it's like, all right. I
Which
think
isn't
that's
what
enough.
all of Fate is, we swear. So anybody that watches Fate Zero first, we swear that's not what the whole franchise is like.
Yeah.
Some of it is, but just not all of it.
Yeah. And I like the fucking, I like some of the fucking games and stuff. Like I wish they would like resurrect the like Fate Extra series into something else,
Yeah.
do more stuff with that. Because
Hmm.
you had like Estella, we never got CCC, which a lot of people, which
Yeah,
would be
not here in
great.
the West anyway, and it's still
Yeah,
never even been fan translated.
yeah, that's funny because there's so many fucking servants that come from like CCC and
Hmm.
stuff, and so many things that are like hinted at that from there.
Yeah. Well, for the
And yeah,
record, like, I know you probably know this, and a lot of other Fate fans know this, but Fate Extra technically is getting that remake, but I don't know yet if like
yeah.
the gameplay is still going to be the same, which is the biggest thing for me because I
I
think
know you
Fate
didn't like
Extra
the
is
original, Fate
yeah,
Extra.
no, like Fate Extra story and plot and everything, and kind of what it was doing was fascinating to me, and I love the characters that are in that, which are being Nero and Tamamo and all that, but I hate the gameplay in that game. It's literally just guess, rock, paper, scissors, and when you get to the boss fights, like it's essentially you just have to memorize shit and like hope you're lucky in other parts. So it's really not fun. It's more so like a chore to get through just to see the story, and
Yeah.
yeah, what's the kind of sad thing about it, which
That's
is
like
why
original Fate Extra.
yeah, that's why I like Fate Extello a hell of a lot more because that's the one that's more of the Muso style where
Yeah, the
you just hack
Muso
and
game.
slash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like
That one I
running
was able to play
through.
through the whole thing and like beat the main story and had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, it's also really cool aesthetic wise too. Like it's got like a really
Hmm.
interesting, like weird cyber vibe to it with like
Yeah,
lots of
all
like
computers and
different.
stuff.
Yeah.
The digital world.
Yeah, it's like it's very like if you're the type who's like if you've seen like a bunch of like Fate stuff, like it's a pretty cool like thing to get into if like you're like, man, I've seen all this other stuff, like that's Fate, I'm bored with it. Going into like Fate Estella, it feels very different,
Hmm.
from like regular Fate stuff. It's kind of like Prisma Ilia in that sense, I guess, where it's pretty different. Mm, yeah, those are probably my favorites. Um, comment. I'll comment on like what I think for like the adaptations. Like I haven't seen the Studio Dean adaptation of like the anime, the original Studio Dean
Yeah,
adaptation of like
which
Fate.
adapted all three routes into one in a kind of really weird way. Which I still need to watch too, but I at least know that much about it.
Yeah. I've seen like the fucking UFO table ones. Those are the ones that everybody's like, oh, you have
Yeah,
to watch
that's the
those.
ones people mostly recommend now instead of
Yeah.
that, which is still funny considering like we've gotten the animes for Heaven's Feel now and Unlimited Blade Works, but we still haven't got one for the original Fate route yet.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, all we've gotten is the Studio Dean one for that, but it combines everything, so it's a little bit weird.
Yeah, there's also like the movies and stuff like that. Oh,
Yeah.
jeez. But yeah, this is basically the general gist. Um I think we're good for now because I'm pretty sure we went over an hour.
Okay.
It's as far
Well,
as
there
I
was the
can.
one other thing I remember. If we wanted to talk about like now that we can sum up just the other topic that's a really big thing about Fate, which is like how you even approach it to begin with.
Oh yeah, holy shit. Completely forgot about that. I guess we got more video to go, huh? Fuck. All
Yeah,
right. Yeah, I
but I
think
think
I'll
that's a
let
good
you
note to
handle
end
that.
it on because like that helps to kind of summarize it for anybody that's new or wants to approach it more.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if we'll have different opinions on it, but I guess in my case, like I don't really think there's a set way you have to approach the series because
Mm,
that's the thing that's a little bit like iffy about it, and like a lot of people in the fandom can be a bit different on it. Like, oh no, you have to watch it this way. You have to read the visual novel first, or whatever. But then there's other people who are like, well, you can be a little bit loose about it. Just kind of go
mm.
here and then jump off or whatever. So,
Yeah, my opinion is just go whichever way you personally
hmm
feel like it because like like, if you feel like you have to read the visual novel first, like, let's say
And
you're the
read
type
it.
of person
Yeah.
who, like, you like really go into it like that, if you enjoy it, that's like great and amazing. But if you're like forcing yourself, maybe you're just better off trying other things and seeing, okay, do I like this franchise, and am I willing to like put in the
Yeah.
time? There's a lot of different things you can like approach it from, and I think it's like silly to limit yourself, because at the end of the day, everything's kind of made with like, oh, you can just hop in, kind of like,
Hmm.
yeah, that's kind of how everything is made, for
Yeah.
Fate.
I do think it's important though that if you get into Fate, trying at least one of the original story-based adaptations is important. So, say you either read the visual novel or watch like the Unlimited Blade Work stuff, or you watch the Heaven Feel stuff. It's definitely important to at least get a taste of the original story first. Or not first, but just in general, to just do that at some point, because I like with a lot of things, it's always kind of an interesting facet to go look back at the original source material of something,
Yeah,
or the original story of something. Um,
which might be difficult because like it's not translated.
yeah.
The
Well, I'm
fit.
not talking about just the visual novel, but I'm saying like any version of the original
Mm.
story.
Oh,
You know,
gotcha. So like the original Fate Stay Night, not just like the spin-off stuff. Gotcha.
yeah, like anything relating to Fate Stay Night itself, because
Yeah, I
that's the
gotcha.
origin point of the franchise. Um, but yeah, I'm much of the same agreement where like really I think you should just judge it based off your own taste. Like if you want a darker story, go for Fate Zero. Go try it. But if you want something, if you want to know like the origin of it, go to the original Fate stuff. And depending on if you like either the visual novel, like if you like the medium of visual novel, or if you like just animes, pick and choose whichever one you want there.
Oh.
And then from there, you can like continue onwards to like the stuff that maybe like explores it in a bit differently. Like if you liked the Fate anime, like the Fate Stay Night stuff, and want more of it, then you can go to the spin-offs, such as the Emiya Cooking Show, or Carnival Phantasm. Jeez, I couldn't speak there for a second. Um, and like so on and so forth, or maybe try other adaptations and whatnot. And then, like, again, there's a lot of other Fate things. Like, there's the Prisma show. If you like magical girls, maybe that one's your go.
Yeah, that one was also originally a manga. So if you're really interested in manga stuff, you could also read the Prisma Ilia
Hmm.
manga, which is farther ahead than the anime.
Yeah, and there's actually a bunch of manga adaptations of stuff too.
Yeah, definitely. That's how I got into it.
Like I haven't read it yet, but I have the first volume of the Fate Grand Order manga. They made a manga of that now, so you don't even have to play the mobile game. Um, Same with the bunch of animes that exist of Fate Grand Order now. Like a lot of people
Yeah.
really like Babylonia, and I really want to watch it considering that's like one of my favorite arcs in the game. But a lot of people say it's great, and you can just kind of watch it as it is, even though it's like one of the last arcs in the original story. But it's like such a good self-contained story in that regard that you can still kind of just enjoy it for
Yeah,
that
there's
part
a
of it.
lot of like self-contained stuff in like
Hmm.
Fate where it's not like sequential. You don't need to like
No,
read or watch something before you read and watch another thing.
yeah, and I think that's kind of the thing about Fate, the Fate franchise in itself, is it's very much a franchise that you just have to explore, and that's when you'll kind of start piecing together your opinions on it and like which stuff you prefer over which stuff you don't like and whatnot.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
it's really hard to just pick one thing and then just only stick with that and then never try anything else because there's just so much that you could easily just spend your time going into different like little facets and like find out, oh, I really like this, but I didn't care for that one as much and whatnot. So, and I think every fan of Fate will have stuff they like and don't like, and
Yep,
to some degree.
absolutely. Like there's a lot of disagreements as far as like what things, how things should be and what they like and yada yada yada.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep, 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 yep.
You yourself are your own best judge about your taste, so take that into heart.
Exactly. Right. don't let these motherfuckers tell you what is good and what's bad and whatever. You just
Mhm.
go out and try it. But
And
yeah,
then you can grow to love and hate the franchise just like us.
exactly.
But sometimes the things you dislike tend to stick around a lot, and you just kind of you get attached to it.
Yeah.
Same with things you love, you know. That's probably why the Fate franchise is like one of those franchises I've just dedicated so much time to, because I just can't escape it, and I always get pulled back in, and I just immerse myself in constantly.
Mm, yeah,
Well, Fate and
absolutely.
Type Moon stuff in general. I don't know what it is about that company, but it just does that to me.
Type Moon, Nasu, maybe there's a singularity where like they didn't exist.
And now we have to like change that back.
Yeah, we have to find Nasu and like make him right face. It's like we need you to write
You need to
face. Like
write this.
we
You
need you
need
to
to
write.
change the course of
Yeah, we
pop
need.
culture in Japan. Come on.
Yeah, and we have to like get him to like, oh, but we can't. But we have to get him to write it like the way he did before. So all the weird shit also has to still be in there.
You got to put your porn in there. Come on. Oh man, that's something we could talk about, but I think we'll save that for some other extra funny discussion. Just the H scenes in the original
Yeah,
Fate Stay Night.
the freaking H scenes,
In
man.
case we want to actually turn people off from the visual novel.
Exactly.
Or turn them on. I don't know. Maybe they'll be like, ooh. But yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that was Oda Zone. That was the Oda Zone. Oda Zone. Oda Zone. Oda Zone. So if you would like this video and you actually watched all of it, which is like impressive, if you actually did that or whatever, even if you didn't, smash that like button, violate that like button, subscribe or whatever, because I'm gonna be making more of these type of things, my buddy, whatever. And also, if you like Nick, say so, please, so that I know to like bring
Say
him
you
along.
like me.
So I could bring him along more often and stuff like that. So yeah, that was the video. Thanks for watching, guys, or listening, because this is mainly gonna be like a radio style thing.
And just remember, you are the bone of your sword.
The bone. I am the bone of my bone. Unlimited reality, Marvel.
Yeah.
All right. Laters.